The camera consists of two main parts, the camera body and the camera lens. The lens creates an image and the camera captures it using a special sensor. Previously, film was used as a sensor, but now image sensors are mostly digital. Talking about a camera lens, we first need to discuss two very similar terms, focal length and focusing distance. They often confuse beginners because they sound similar but represent completely different lens properties. Let's talk about each of them separately. Focal length is the distance from the optical center of the lens to the sensor. All you need to remember is that a smaller focal length gives a larger viewing angle. In other words, the more space will be visible in the frame. It is easy to see that the viewing angle determines the scale of object in the frame. The smaller the viewing angle, the larger objects appear in the picture. It's like we're looking at them through a spyglass. Focal length is an important characteristic of a lens. Usually the focal length is written on the lens body and is given in millimeters. You can find lenses with a fixed focal length, which means that it is constant and does not change. For example, 23 mm or 56 mm. And also you can find lenses with a variable focal length, for example 16 to 50. Such lenses are called zoom lenses, and changing the focal length is called optical zoom. For zooming, the lens usually has a special ring, and often the values of the focal length are written on this ring. Photographers almost never look at those numbers, because all changes are visible in the viewfinder. Just rotate the ring and change the viewing angle, choosing the position you like. So, we figured out what focal length is. Let's move on to the second term, focusing distance. In practice, the focusing distance is the distance from the sensor to the object, which should be as sharp as possible in the photo. And in order for the object to become sharp, you need to arrange elements inside the lens in a special way. This is called focusing. Note that in fact we are not focusing on the object, but focusing on the exact distance from the camera. Those objects will be in focus, which are located on a plane that is equidistant from the camera. And everything that is outside this plane will be blurred. And the farther the object is from the plane, the more it will be blurred in the photo. You can focus either manually or entrust it to the autofocus mode. If your camera supports both manual and autofocus, then it should have a special switch. Manual focus is usually controlled by rotating a special focus ring. Be careful if you are using a zoom lens. Do not turn the zoom ring instead of the focus ring. Typically, photographers focus manually when they do not hurry and have enough time. For example, when shooting a landscape or still life. But with more dynamic types of shooting, it is faster, easier, and more convenient to use autofocus. And camera manufacturers are doing their best to make autofocus better. Autofocus systems are actively developing, something new is constantly appearing. All of those innovations differ from camera to camera. Therefore, we leave those capabilities of your camera to your own study. Before moving on to discussing the aperture, let's talk about the depth of field. Look at this ruler. We focused the lens on the number 3, but note that neighboring numbers in front and behind can also seem quite sharp to the viewer. For the viewer, not only a thin plane of focus will be sharp, but some wider space. If we measure the distance from the camera to the near and far boundaries of this space, we can calculate the so-called depth of field. In practice, photographers usually don't bother with those precise calculations. Moreover, it's rather difficult to determine the exact boundaries of the depth of field, especially since they are largely subjective and depend on visual acuity. But the main thing to remember is that the depth of field can decrease or increase depending on the camera settings. Depth of field control allows you to blur the background in a portrait or vice versa to sharpen the entire space in a landscape from nearby rocks to distant mountains. The main setting that allows you to change the depth of field in a photo is the aperture. The lens has a special mechanism, diaphragm, with which we can reduce the diameter of the lens hole. This variable hole is called an aperture. Reducing the aperture reduces the amount of light that passes through the lens. As you can see, the image becomes darker, but the depth of field increases. To better see those changes in depth of field, let's make those shots the same brightness. As we remember from the beginning of this video, you can adjust the brightness of the image by changing the shutter speed or ISO. Let's increase the brightness with shutter speed. What do we see? When light enters the lens through a large aperture, the depth of field is narrow. And the smaller the aperture, the wider the depth of field. And the more objects in the photo will appear sharp to the viewer. Aperture is the main tool for controlling depth of field. But there are other factors to consider as well. For example, the closer the focus distance, the narrower the depth of field will be. This is a common problem in macro photography when we shoot small objects close up. There will be a lot of blurry details in the photo, even if the aperture is greatly reduced. The depth of field also depends on the focal length and even on the size of the sensor. Over time, you will take into account those features, but at the start of studying photography, you don't need to bother yourself with this yet. For a basic understanding, the main setting for controlling depth of field is aperture. Unfortunately, different cameras have different controls, so we cannot tell which button is used to set the aperture in your camera. We can only give you one piece of advice. Start setting up your camera in manual mode so that automation does not prevent you from seeing and analyzing all the changes that you make. There can be a little confusion with the aperture designations in the camera. Different camera manufacturers may write the same value in different ways. But the main thing here is to get the gist. Aperture is most often written as fraction. For example, look at those three numbers. Which of those numbers is greater? The one with the smaller denominator. The largest number here is 1 divided by 2.8. Saying or writing this number as a fraction is too long, therefore photographers usually say simply aperture 2.8. But always keep in mind that 2.8 is the denominator. So aperture 2.8 is a more open aperture than 4 or 5.6. And the depth of field at aperture 2.8 will be less than at aperture 5.6. As we have already found out, a wider aperture allows more light to pass through the lens. And each lens has its own limits to which the aperture can be opened. The maximum open aperture is indicated in the name of the lens. Often is called the lens speed. The fastest lenses with values of 2.8, 1.4, 1.2 are usually primes with a fixed focal length. And zoom lenses are less fast, but such is the price paid for the variability of viewing angles. In addition, in many zoom lenses, this lens speed value is often also variable. For example, the designation of a 16 to 50 zoom lens 3.5 to 5.6 means that in the wide angle position, when the focal length is 16 mm, the aperture can be opened up to maximum of 3.5. And in the narrow angle position, when the focal length is 50 mm, the maximum open aperture will be 5.6. This disadvantage introduces some inconvenience during shooting, but such lenses are cheaper. Don't worry if you don't have a very fast lens. Yes, it will limit you a little, but this does not mean that your pictures will be dark. The camera has other settings that you can use to change the brightness of the picture. It is not difficult to guess that those are just the remaining two parameters, shutter speed and ISO. Let's remember, the lens creates an image and the sensor captures it. The longer the exposure to the sensor, the brighter the photo will be. Duration of light exposure to the sensor is called exposure time. Exposure time is regulated by an electronic or mechanical shutter. Therefore, exposure time can also be called shutter speed. The shutter speed range is very wide, from thousandths of a second to several seconds or even several minutes. Most often, shutter speeds of a few fractions of a second are used in photography. Therefore, in many cameras, only one denominator of the fraction is used for a shorter designation. And as in the case of the aperture, you just need to get used to it, although sometimes it can confuse you. For example, to indicate a shutter speed of several seconds, a double prime symbol is added. So we can understand, for example, that it is half a second or 2 seconds. But in some cameras, a decimal fraction may also be used, so be careful. Shutter speed is one of the main settings that changes the brightness of the picture. For example, when we talk about the depth of field and changed the aperture, we got pictures of different brightness. As you remember, to compensate for this decrease in brightness, we set longer shutter speeds. This is a simple setup sequence. When you want to increase the depth of field, stop down the aperture. And to keep the picture bright, increase the shutter speed. And everything would be so simple as if we always shoot only stationary objects. But if during shooting the object moved relative to the camera, then those movements will be captured in the photo. The object will be blurry. The faster the shutter speed, the less this motion blur is appearing on the picture. At very fast shutter speeds, the blur will become so small that we won't even notice it, and the moving object in the photo will appear sharp. But even if the subjects are stationary, the camera itself can also move and affect motion blur, sometimes even when the camera is on a tripod, and especially this happens when you hold the camera in your hands. Therefore, to get sharper photos, try to set shutter speeds faster. Motion blur can depend on many factors: the focal length of the lens, the speed of the subject, the size of the sensor, the use of image stabilizer, and so on. So the easiest way to find the right shutter speed is by experience. When in doubt, always check the sharpness of the picture by zooming in on the camera screen as much as possible. If you see a blur, set the shutter speed to a shorter one and take the picture again. But if it's not the camera that is moving, but the subject, then the stabilizer on tripod will not help you. On the one hand, motion blur is a problem, but on the other hand, it can be used as a creative technique. These are the effects you can achieve if you shoot moving objects at slow shutter speeds. So, aperture allows us to control the depth of field, and shutter speed help us to be creative when shooting moving objects. But there may be scenes where both aperture and shutter speed are important to the photographer's creative vision. For example, we need to set the desired aperture and shutter speed, but the picture turns out to be dark. This means that for those settings, there is not enough light. If we can control the power of the light source, then the problem is solved simply. We increase its power and the picture becomes brighter. But more often, the photographer has to shoot in the available light conditions, not being able to change those conditions. For those cases, there is an ISO setting. It is important to remember only one thing about ISO units. The larger this value, the brighter the picture will be. For example, if we have a dark shot at ISO 100, we can increase the ISO and the photo will become brighter. But the higher we increase the ISO, the more noticeable digital noise will be. Despite the fact that modern cameras are now quite good at dealing with noise, it is better to try not to increase the ISO unnecessarily. There are situations when even changing the ISO does not help the photographer to achieve the desired brightness of the image at a given shutter speed and aperture. Those are two cases. When the light isn't enough, then you still have to use additional lighting. And when there is too much light, then you will have to reduce the available lighting. Or, for example, put a special natural density filter on the lens. But this is more advanced level of photography. For beginners, the three basic settings, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, are usually enough to achieve the correct brightness of the picture. Now it remains to figure out what the correct brightness of the image is and whether it is possible to somehow check this correctness. And here we must note an important feature. It is almost impossible to objectively understand the brightness of the image by eye. First of all, our eyes are constantly adapting to ambient light conditions and can see the same photo in different ways. In the darkness, the photo may appear bright, but in sunny weather, it will appear dark. Secondly, the brightness of the camera screen can be adjusted differently or even changed during shooting. Therefore, we need some more objective way to evaluate the brightness of an image. And for those purposes, a histogram is useful. In most modern cameras, the histogram of each shot can be displayed on the screen. We will not go into details now, but we will say briefly. The main thing is to make such shutter speed, aperture and ISO settings so that the histogram gets closer to the right edge, but not too much, otherwise the photo may be overexposed. To avoid overexposure, you need to leave a small gap. Working with a histogram is an interesting topic that deserves another detailed video. There are also many topics that deserve detailed videos using metering, exposure compensation, shooting modes, and so on, but those topics relate to camera automation and go beyond the analysis of basic camera settings.